Hey guys, good morning. Just a couple moments till we start the class meeting today at 10, so hope you guys are doing well and everything's going smooth. Just checking one thing on my phone really fast. Good morning, Sebastian. Hey there. Kylie, welcome back. Hey Zoe. Claire, Brandon, Zachary, welcome back everyone. Hey Olga, happy Friday. Hi Sydney. Okay guys, it's pretty much 10, so I'm just gonna get us underway here. Welcome back to the meeting, and I'm hoping you guys have had a good week. Let me just start with a quick question to kind of get this clear for everybody. Who can confirm that you've received the study guide that I sent yesterday? I sent it out yesterday through Canvas. Maybe some of you have had a chance to look at that and open it up. So do let me know. Okay, Olga, great. So everybody should know that the study guide for the midterm has been distributed now, so you have access to it. You can start looking at it and getting your notes and review prepared for the upcoming test. Next Friday, a week from today, is when we have our midterm exam. That's right before we go off to spring break. And we also have 2 review sessions scheduled for Monday and Wednesday next week. So today's the last day of lecturing on the topics and material from the book. And then we'll just spend all next week getting prepared for the midterm and then taking it on Friday. I'm also going to finish the grading of the first essay this weekend. So, by the end of the weekend, I'll be in touch with you guys through Canvas so that you can, after that, just check with me for your score, for your grade, or for your comments on any of your submitted essays. So that's just what we're looking at for the next couple of meetings over the next week. Today we finish Judith Thompson's Trolley Problem. Over the weekend, I'll be in touch with you guys about your first essays being finished. And then, you'll take your exam next Friday after the review sessions, Monday, Wednesday. You will be taking it on Friday during the normal class time, yes, Sydney? So you're just going to be sent the test form at just before 9 a.m. Through Canvas, so you'll receive the document then. And then you're going to reply back to me with an email with your attached answers included. And so you have until 9:50 until the expiration of the class period. In the study guide, you guys can see a whole list of possible questions. These are the candidate questions for the test itself. So what the test will show on the day of the exam is that I've selected like a random sampling of maybe 9 or 10 of the questions on the list, and then you'll be responsible for answering something like 6 or 7 of those 9 or 10 questions. So you'll have a little bit of control over the nature of which questions you answer, because out of the list that I give you of 9 or 10, you'll be able to, select your preferred 6 or 7. So you'll be able to like eliminate 3 pretty much. And that's how it's going to be. So hopefully that's all clear and understood. If you guys have any other questions or anything as we get closer to the test, certainly let me know. But on Monday and Wednesday next week, we will go over as many of the study guide questions as a group as we possibly can so that you can feel confident coming into the test. Is it open notes? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's the internet now, so I'm not going to be there with you taking your test. So I don't know, maybe Sebastian, you have other professors that put you on like a camera rig or some type of proctorio system. Is that what you mean? I don't have time for all that. I also think there are privacy issues with that. So it's just whatever, open notes, open book, do whatever you need to do, but you have to write your own original answers. Nobody can cooperate or collaborate with any other student writing those answers or coming up with their study guide information. But basically, yeah, it's open notes. Just like everything in my view, now that we're online, I don't know what the alternative is, having everyone rigged to a camera, putting them on Zoom. I just don't want to do that. But anyway, okay, so fair enough. Everyone's clear for the moment on you know what's coming forward. You have your test next Friday. I'll let you know about your grades over the weekend for the first essay. Once I'm finished with that, I want people to individually seek me for their grade on the first essay. So I'll let you know when I notify you to simply send me an email, and I'll be replying to anyone within a day or two after they email me. Okay, then, so let's continue, I guess, and finish our notes on the trolley problem. That's what our goal is, to finish that today. Also, one more thing. I have office hours usually, as you guys know, Fridays from 11 to 12. That's right after this class period. But I'm going to move those around next week because otherwise no one will benefit from having a last chance to interact with me before the exam. Obviously, no one's going to want to go to office hours after you finish your midterm and then you're free for spring break. So I'm going to just modify the schedule for my office hours next week so that they occur before the exam, just in case anybody wants to have any last-minute cram session with me or to ask questions about anything. So I'll notify you next week when we get closer to the day of the test, probably early in the morning on Friday or previous day, Thursday afternoon or something. Okay, so welcome back everyone, and as usual, yeah, leave a comment if you can at some point just to kind of keep a record of attendance. And so let's return then to the trolley problem of Judith Thompson. So author Judith Thompson, and the essay from 1985, The Trolley Problem. Okay, so I'm going to start by just reviewing information that we began with last time when we started breaking down the trolley problem, and then we'll carry through to the next part of the notes once I get there. So first of all, the trolley problem overall is a kind of exploration of puzzling intuitions that we have when we consider examples of killing versus letting die. Basically, what the author is pointing out is that the reaction that audiences tend to give when presented with scenarios in which an individual either kills or lets die, the responses given are inconsistent with each other, because the same kind of scenarios which lead some to say that an action would be wrong, you just modify certain features of those examples, then the same kind of audience will say that the action is not wrong. So we want to try and figure out and sort through these somewhat inconsistent and confused intuitions about killing versus letting die. The way that this is done is to present us with a pair of contrasting scenarios which elicit these divergent moral responses. So one of them initially was the trolley driver case. So I'm going to talk you through these cases again. The trolley driver case is a case where we imagine that there's a trolley which is speeding forward on a track, and on the track ahead there's 5 people, which if the trolley continues going forward, it will hit all 5 and kill all 5. Not good. Well, the driver in this scenario has a switch available to them. They can't hit the brakes for whatever reason, but they do have a switch, and if they hit the switch sends the trolley from its current track to another stretch of track, and if it goes on that stretch of track, it will not hit the 5 people and kill them, but unfortunately there is one person on that other side of the track, and it would hit and kill the one. So the audience is surveyed, and the question is given, what do you think, would it be wrong or not for the individual to divert the trolley so that it averts the death of 5 and instead just hits 1? And the overwhelming reaction of most all people that are surveyed with that question is that it's not wrong. People basically, long story short, don't think it's wrong for the driver to flip the switch, send it towards 1 instead of 5. Okay, well, compare that to the transplant scenario. The transplant scenario, we are told, is an example where 5 people are dying of various types of organ failure, and so they need transplants in order to save their lives. In the transplant scenario, we are also told that they all have the same kind of very rare blood type, these 5 individual patients, so it would be possible to save all 5 of their lives if you had one suitable organ donor that was a blood match, because they all need different organs, so it's capable of saving 5 with one person. So the person, let's say that's the doctor, can't find any such donor, and as he's ready to give up on his search, in comes a young healthy person that's got no real health problems, but they do have the right blood type to be a donor for the 5. So assume that person's not at all interested in sacrificing their life to save the other 5 people. Would it be okay morally or not for the doctor then to just kill the one patient, take the organs, give them to the 5 people, and save their lives that way? Well, when this is the example question, almost everybody, as you can probably imagine, says, no, that's not okay, that's totally wrong. So here is the first iteration of the trolley problem. It is when you juxtapose the audience response to driver and transplant. Why, essentially, do most people think that the action of the trolley driver is okay, but not the action of the surgeon? So what's the solution to the problem? Well, one author tried to give a solution to the problem a couple of decades before Judith Thompson, and this is another woman philosopher of the 20th century named Philippa Foot. Philippa Foot thought she had solved the trolley problem by mentioning a pair of moral principles that we discussed last time. One of them is the idea that killing 5 is worse than killing 1. Okay, so the point being made here is that killing is bad, it's terrible, it's wrong, but the numbers do matter in terms of the degree of wrongness. So if you were forced to choose between a person killing 5 and 1, obviously killing 1 is not as bad as killing 5, even though they're both horrible and terrible. Clearly 5 is many more people dead, a higher death toll, a higher body count than 1. So with killing, more is worse rather than less. On the other hand, though, another principle that the author Foot thinks is true, and that most would find agreement with, is that it is worse to kill 1 than to let 5 die. So suppose that your choice is not kill a bigger number or a smaller number, but rather kill 1 person and their life ends by your hand, or just allow 5 people to die of whatever problem that they already are facing that you did not cause. So killing is so bad that most would probably agree that if your choice was between not remaining involved in something and people will die, or actually killing a person, it's worse to kill 1 than to merely let 5 die. So does this explain why people react differently to the two cases? It seems like it could, because people might think that it's right, that it's not wrong for the driver to act, because if he continues on his path, then he kills a bigger number. But you could say that it is wrong for the surgeon to interact or to intervene, because he would do the worst thing if he kills 1 instead of just letting 5 die of natural causes. Well, as much as that may seem like an effective solution, Thompson says not quite. And the way that she tells us that the solution hasn't worked is by making an adjustment to the trolley scenario. That's where I think we kind of were running low on time last meeting, but I introduced for you the second iteration of the trolley scenario, which is bystander at the switch. So in bystander at the switch, we are told that now, I'll give you the image of it. I can erase the title and author information above. So here is the scenario on discussion, bystander at the switch. So what Thompson says is that if you replace driver with bystander, the first scenario with this new version, the solution that Foot offered no longer is effective. So with bystander at the switch, you have a trolley. It's being operated by a person who's incapacitated, not conscious, so they can't do anything. The trolley's going towards 5 people ahead on the track. And there's a diversion on the trolley track where on the other stretch 1 person is there. Now in this example, since the driver can't hit any switch because he's unconscious, it seems like nothing can be done, but there's a bystander just walking around in the local area, and he sees a remote switch, which can achieve the same thing of redirecting the trolley to the other side. So the audience is asked about this case. Do you think it would be okay for the bystander to flip the switch? And essentially the overwhelming response is that sure, it's not wrong for the bystander to flip the switch. So the difference between it being the driver and the bystander doesn't seem to faze people. Everyone thinks it's okay for the driver to flip that switch, and most everybody also thinks it's okay and not wrong for the bystander to do it. But with the bystander now replacing driver, we cannot avail ourselves of Foot's attempted solution. Because consider the choice situation of the bystander. The bystander now chooses between flipping the switch, which causes this 1 person to die, so killing 1, or not touching the switch at all. And if he doesn't, he's not involved and he doesn't kill 5. The trolley driver and the trolley does. So it looks like the bystander's choice is kill 1 or let 5 die. But no one thinks this is wrong to do. And in the case of the transplant surgeon, which also is kill 1 or let 5 die, everyone does think that is wrong to do. So we haven't yet gotten our solution on the table. And so Thompson says, let's try another attempt. Sorry. So just to be perfectly clear, this bystander case is what's supposed to overturn the Philippa Foot's suggestion of a solution. Because Foot said people are tracking this difference between driver and transplant. They're tracking the difference that in driver, the guy could kill 5 or kill 1, but in transplant, the guy could either kill 1 or let 5 die. When bystander replaces driver, it becomes kill 1 or let 5 die, in this case, just like the surgeon case. But yet the responses of the audience still are divergent in the 2 examples. So what's a better solution? Let's try something else. She says, here's another attempt to solve a problem, and she calls it the Kantian solution to the trolley problem. But spoiler alert, I'm just going to say right now, she suggests this is another possible solution, but in the end she's going to say, sorry though, this also does not solve it. So there's like another failed solution, this one, before we would get to her, the real solution that she provides. So here it is, the Kantian solution. So we've studied some of the material of Immanuel Kant, the great philosopher of ethics, and we studied his moral system of Kantianism. Some people believe that Kant's moral philosophy can be used as a way of solving the so-called trolley problem, and here's how. So before I write the solution, though, let me just quiz you on something. Kant said famously in the categorical imperative, the second version, that we should never treat a human being in what way? Let me ask you that. Anyone can tell me in the chat. According to Kant, categorical imperative version 2, you must never treat a human being as a blank to a blank. What is that statement? Can you help me fill in the gaps? Don't ever treat people, human beings like yourself, as what? Let me know. That's right, very good. Okay, so don't treat people as a means to an end. Always treat people as an end in themselves. So that means, in other words, don't use people as tools or instruments to achieve goals that you may have for yourself, which the other person doesn't share. So yeah, that's correct. Good, very good, guys. Don't ever treat anyone as a means. Now, how could that be useful toward a solution of the trolley problem? Well, one might argue that in only one of the cases is the victim used as a means, and not in the other. And that's why people basically reach to the thought that the one where one is used as a means is where the action is wrong. And in the other case, where no one's used as a means, it's permitted. So here I'll write the point out. In the trolley cases, the one victim, so not the 5 that are on the track, but the 1 on the other part of the track. In the trolley cases, the one victim is not used as a means. But in the transplant case, the one victim, the person whose organs would be taken, is used as a means. So maybe this explains why people generally think that the action of the trolley scenario is okay and not the action involved in the transplant scenario. Why would anybody say that the victim in transplant is used like a means but not the victim in the trolley cases? Here is the explanation that Thompson tries to give. Okay, so I need you to try and focus. There's a little bit of a mental gymnastics that you'll have to go with, but it's okay. So, okay, she says you involve someone in an interaction that uses them as a means if the goal of the action would not be achievable if that other person were to somehow vanish right at the moment that you are going to act. Okay, so the question then is, whatever goal you have that involves this one victim, the action that involves this one victim, if you could still achieve the goal behind the action, even if the person disappeared at the last moment, then they were not used as a means. So I can make this more easy to understand through a quick illustration using the example here. Okay, now think about this. I want you to imagine that maybe a picture will help a little bit. I don't know, I have not much space, but I'll try and draw a quick picture. So here is the trolley. This is just like, let's say, bystander. Trolley coming forward towards these 5 people. Okay, other side, 1 person. Here you have a bystander who has access to the switch that can divert the trolley to the other side. Now I want you to imagine this. Suppose that as the trolley, so he hits the switch, sending the trolley off towards 1 and not towards 5. Suppose though that at the very last moment, right as the trolley is bearing down on him and about to make the impact, suppose for whatever weird reason, magic, divine intervention, I don't know, but at the last second that this guy was to somehow poof, disappear off the track, just vanish, like from a magic trick. Or like in the old Warner Brothers cartoons, he slips down into a rabbit hole beneath the track and he sees the trolley pass overhead. Question, okay? If he disappeared from the track at the last moment, would we still have saved these 5 lives by hitting the switch? That's a yes or no question. So consider it carefully and just, in a way, it's an obvious answer. Say he disappeared at the last moment, just hypothetically. Like we send the trolley over here, boom, 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 it's going, poof, he's gone. So he's not on the track anymore. He's like, he pops up 10 feet away off to the side, so he's been spared. If that were to happen magically, would we still have saved these folks by hitting the switch? Would we still have achieved the goal of saving 5 lives if the 1 person disappeared at the last moment on the other side of the track? You got to tell me, though. I mean, you can't just think about it and wait for someone else to say it. So do tell me, would we still have saved those lives if the 1 guy disappeared at the last moment? Can you put this together as like a cartoon? Train's coming at him, he disappears. Did we save 5 lives or not? You got to say it, though. You got to write it. I can't read your mind. You got to say it. Good, yes, exactly, Brandon. So no need to be hesitant, everybody. It's not that hard, right? If the guy pops off of the track at the last minute, yeah, you still save the 5 lives because that just means the trolley just keeps going in that direction. And now, in a way, that would be better, wouldn't it? Because if he disappeared at the last minute, then when you switch the trolley track, you save these 5 lives at no human cost. There's no death toll then at all, right? So what that might show you is that we don't really use this guy to save the 5 lives. He's like in the wrong place at the wrong time, but if he wasn't there, then redirecting the trolley would be even better because it wouldn't hurt anybody. So although his death is a foreseeable outcome of flipping that switch, it's not like his death is the intended result behind flipping the switch. The real intention is just to send the trolley in a different direction. And if the guy wasn't there, we would have liked that better and we still could have saved lives. So his presence on the track is not needed for us to save the 5 lives by diverting the trolley away. You understand? So like the life-saving mission of redirecting the trolley doesn't necessarily have to have a 1 guy up here. If he wasn't there, so much better it would be. Then we would have saved 5 lives with no cost. But let's compare that to the transplant case. So let's go through these steps again with the other case. In the transplant scenario, imagine that at the last moment, as the surgeon is going to bear down on him with a scalpel or whatever, that the victim, the 1 victim, poof, disappears off of the operating table, just vanishes, like, God snatches him away or something from this maniac surgeon. Well, if that was to happen, and he disappears right at the last moment as we're about to act on him, would we have saved 5 lives in the transplant scenario? So that's my question. If the 1 innocent victim disappears at the last moment, do we then have the means to save the 5 people in that transplant scenario? So you can tell me the answer to that. Good, Sydney. No, we wouldn't, because obviously in that example, the body parts and organs of the human are essential to the means of safety and survival for the other 5 people. So, and you could see, therefore, that the 1 victim in the transplant scenario clearly is used as a means, because like literally their body parts are essential to saving these other person's lives. And if they were to somehow vanish at the last moment, you'd be there empty-handed with no organs to use. So if this guy disappears at the last minute, long story short, everything's okay for these 5 people and they'll still live. In the transplant scenario, if the guy was to magically disappear at the last minute, then you couldn't have used his body parts to save 5. So he's used as a means for sure. It's not like we're saying, we wish you weren't there, so then we could save these other 5 people without having to hurt you. But in the transplant scenario, but in the trolley scenario, it's not essential that this guy be positioned on the track to save 5. So maybe you can argue that that's Kant's way of looking at solving the problem. When people find it wrong to do what the transplant surgeon does, they're tracking the idea that he's going to be used as a means. And when people think this is not wrong, maybe what they're thinking is that although the trolley will hit him, he's not really being used for the purpose of saving the 5 lives. It's just that, it's an incidental side effect of taking an action that will divert a trolley away from them. Okay, so has this solved the problem? It seems like it might. That in, again, transplant the guy's a means, but not in driver or other trolley cases. But once again, Thompson snatches the solution away from us. What's the phrase? Snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. Well, whatever. She says, I'm sorry, but this solution also is not going to ultimately be successful. And the way that she shows that it fails is by adding yet another iteration of the trolley scenario. So we're going to learn about another version again, which will effectively destroy the Kantian solution. And so this new scenario she calls loop. So I'm going to draw out the loop situation. Okay then. So here's loop. With the loop scenario, certain things are similar. We have a trolley, again, and the trolley being driven by this unconscious driver, straight ahead on a path towards 5 people on the track. Now, you have a fork in the trolley track, but here's the thing. In the other 2 trolley scenarios, driver and bystander, you have imagined that the 2 trolley tracks diverge and they just continue off in their own separate directions and never loop around. But imagine that we change that and say that in this version, the trolley does form a loop. And over here, the one guy, I don't know how best to say this. Let's just say this is a large gentleman, okay? So there, he's a little bigger, maybe a lot bigger. So now, in the loop case, okay, here's our bystander over here standing by with the remote switch. Okay, so here's the facts about this case. Suppose that if the trolley goes forward on its on and no one hits any switch, then it continues this way, it hits 5 people and kills them all. But the 5 people combined have enough mass to arrest the forward progress of the trolley, so it stops in its tracks and it doesn't continue around the loop to basically strike and kill the big guy from the other side. On the other hand, if you flip the switch, then you send it in this direction towards the one larger fellow, and he's sufficiently big that that will also block the trolley from continuing on around and killing the 5 from that side. Okay, now, before our little test of whether someone has been used as a means in an action involving them was to ask whether or not the action would still be effective if the person were to disappear at the last moment, whatever role they have in the interaction. So now ask this. In the loop, if we flip this switch, sending the trolley up this way, and this guy somehow, poof, abracadabra, disappears off of the trolley track as the trolley's about to hit him, would we have still saved the 5 lives in case of his disappearance, yes or no? So we flip the switch, trolley goes towards him, abracadabra, he's gone. Would that have prevented the death of 5, or would they still have died in that version of the case? If the guy disappears, does the trolley hit the other 5, yes or no? So just let me understand. Brandon, what's your answer? No. You're saying no, that if he disappears, the trolley does not hit the other 5 people? Why not? If he disappears, there's a loop. The trolley continues through the area where he otherwise would have been. So let's just write it out as a sentence so that I know what you're saying either no or yes to. No, it still does? Okay, so I was just not sure whether you were negating or affirming my question. Yes, so he would, if the trolley goes up towards this guy and he disappears at the last moment, then yeah, the trolley will still kill 5 people. Because in that version of the case, it just continues around the loop and hits them and kills them from the opposite side. So now with the loop replacing bystander, it seems as though this man's death actually is essential to the prevention of the 5 lives being lost. Because again, if he's not there, if he's not present for whatever reason, then you don't have the sufficient size and mass to block the path of the trolley continuing. So the audience is asked about this question. Is it wrong for the bystander to hit the switch and loop? And the results are that nobody thinks that's wrong either, or at least very few. So again, it's like the overwhelming majority say, sure, it's not wrong if he flips this switch. But if that is the way the audience responds to this case, then that no longer gives us the Kantian solution to use, because now we have restored parallelism between this trolley case and the transplant scenario. Because in both of them, it looks like the victim will be used as a means. In this example, the guy is used as a means, because if he's not there present on the track, then flipping the switch doesn't save anyone's life. And in the transplant scenario, the one victim is used as a means, because if that victim disappears at the last moment, then you don't have the means to save the other 5 people's lives with his organs. But yet, even though it looks like now both individuals are used as a means, large gentleman and transplant victim, the audience isn't seeing them on a moral par. Everyone thinks that this is okay, but not the case of acting on the one victim in transplant. So we don't yet have a solution that's serviceable, because when we modify the trolley case yet again, we restore symmetry between it and the transplant example, and the divergent intuitions remain. So what is the solution then? Thompson says, okay, are you ready? I'm going to finally let you know what the real solution to this puzzling moral dilemma is. So now we get to Thompson's solution, which of course she's going to say is the right one. So let's go over that. Thompson's solution to the trolley problem. Okay, so the solution Thompson thinks is the right one is a stated principle that we're going to write now on the board. And what it says is that it is permissible to redirect a threat from a larger to a smaller group of people, from a more numerous to a less numerous group of people. It's okay to divert a threat as long as it is the same threat. So let me write that down and we'll just explain. This is the key. As long as it is the same threat. Okay, so morally permissible to redirect a threat from greater to smaller number of people, as long as it's the same threat. Okay, now, to see how this can possibly solve the trolley problem, let us ask, what are the threats that face the characters in these various examples, okay? So in all the trolley examples, whether it's driver, bystander, or loop, what is the thing that is threatening the lives of 5 people in those examples? What would be the cause of the death of 5 people in the trolley examples? So, you know, they're at risk. These 5 people are at risk. Something threatens their life. What is it? That's my question. In the hypothetical scenario of trolley, what is threatening to 5 lives? Something is. What is it? Easy enough to say, but let me know from you. What is the threat to 5 lives in those cases? It is the trolley. That's right. Yes, Sydney. So, I mean, obviously, if nothing is done and the trolley continues in the way it's moving, it's going to strike and kill the 5 people. So it's a threat to 5 people, the oncoming trolley. And if it hits them, then that'll be what kills them. Now, in all those same trolley cases, if someone hits a switch, whether it's the driver or a bystander or whatever, if someone hits that switch, then what's going to not threaten, well, sorry, if someone hits the switch, then what threatens the one person instead? Okay, so we've already heard that what threatens 5 at the beginning is the trolley. But if someone intervenes, now there's one guy who faces a threat. And what would be the threat facing him or her or they? So the train threatens 5, say someone hits the switch. Now what threatens 1? What would be the cause of death to the 1? if someone intervenes to touch the switch? I mean, something would kill this one person. What would it be? It would also be the train. Exactly, Kylie, yes. So here's the point. There's one trolley, and if this one trolley is bearing down on a certain number of people, but through intervention, that one threat could be diverted towards a smaller number of people. And so the intuition that Thompson thinks most everyone has is that when there is one current threat that exists and it's facing a larger number, if all you're doing is funneling that threat into a less destructive pathway so that it hits or harms less, that's not generally wrong. But what is wrong is to create a wholly different threat for a smaller number of people to face in order to prevent a larger group of people from threat or death. So now let's consider the other example, transplant. In the transplant example, what is the threat facing 5 people? So in transplant, 5 people are threatened with death. And what is it that is posing that threat to them? Now we've moved on from trolley to transplant, and the question is, again, what is a threat to 5 people in those transplant scenarios? It's not a train, it's not a trolley, but what is it? Just in the example as given, you got 5 people that are definitely at risk of something and they might die from it, but it's not a trolley. What could it be? One moment. Okay, sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. There was like a buffering issue on my side. But yeah, the thing that threatens them, well, you say their own selves. I don't know if that kind of makes it sound like they're going to kill themselves or something, but it's rather something happening to them, like a disease, right? It's organ failure. Well, Brandon, I'm confused what you're saying. The rare blood type doesn't threaten those people. Are you mistaking the facts about the scenario? The thing that threatens the 5 people's lives is just organ failure. They have various types of organ failure. The blood type is not what threatens them. I mean, they just have a rare blood type. But what's threatening them is just natural causes. One person's going to die from kidney failure. One person's going to die from liver failure. One person's going to die from heart failure. Another person from failure of lung function. So that's what's threatening the lives of 5 people in that transplant case. Is that all clear? So natural causes, organ failure, etc. But suppose that the surgeon gets involved to prevent their death, right? What then would be a threat to face the one person? Tell me what threatens the life of the one other individual. Yeah, so no, not to worry, but I just wanted to clarify, Brandon. But anyway, new question though. What is the threat to the one person instead of the 5 if the surgeon interacts, or intervenes, I should say? Just, if the one person dies, what will be the cause of his or her or their death in the transplant scenario? So we know that in trolley, it's trolley versus trolley, 5 versus 1. But in transplant, it's like organ failure is what the 5 people are facing, and the one person's not threatened by organ failure, okay? But tell me, though, specifically what you would say, or how would you phrase it? What would be the threat to that one person's life in the transplant situation? Because that's the point. We're trying to see, is it the same threat or not? The taking of the organs, right, the doctor. It would be the homicidal maniac doctor with a scalpel or whatever tool he's going to use to kill the one person. So is that transferring an existing threat from one group to a lesser number of people? No, because it's not the same threat at all. On the one hand, 5 people are at risk of death from organ failure. On the other hand, one guy, I guess, would be at risk from an act of homicide. And that's not a natural cause. It's a different threat. So Thompson says, here's what she thinks most people are responding with. When you see that there's an existing threat and there's a way of diverting it into a smaller number, it's okay to affect that diversion of threat. But what's not okay is to try and prevent something that threatens a larger group of people from hurting them by creating and establishing an entirely new and distinct threat for a smaller group of people to face. Okay, so diversion of threat is a real thing that, morally speaking, probably I think we have the kind of intuitions that Thompson's talking about. Let me give you a more realistic example. These trolley cases are great, but sometimes I know they may strain credulity in the sense that they're far from anything natural or realistic. So here, suppose you had a pilot piloting a plane, and tragically the plane has crashed, or it's going to crash. It's descending rapidly, towards the ground, and you've lost motor control, etc. So the only thing you can kind of do now is just steer it a little bit as it makes its crash landing, and with devastating consequences. Suppose that the pilot looking down sees this. No way he can save the plane, so it's going to be a loss. But the last thing he can do is this. On its current trajectory down, it's going to like strike Dodger Stadium filled with like 20,000 fans. Imagine that. So a huge loss of life, very much a big disaster. On the other hand, though, if he simply tilts the plane and tries to steer it into this other direction, then it will land on a big open field where there's like maybe a couple dozen people hanging out, picnicking and stuff. So his choice is this. This one plane is threatening the lives of some number of people down there. On its current path, it's going to probably kill maybe hundreds or thousands. But if I steer it over here, it's not that there will be no death toll, but it will be much, much smaller. Now, if the pilot, took the effort to try and cause it to land in the less populated field, I don't think anyone would say he did something wrong, shame on him. It was a terrible, immoral act. You'd probably say, well, that was at least permissible, because as long as this plane is bound to hit somebody and some number of people, the only question now is how many will it be? And less would be better because it would be more preventative of the loss of life. So when you have one threat, and this single threat is either going to just affect more or less, then any action that causes it to affect less strikes most people as within bounds of morality. But what's not okay is to establish a different threat, like in the case of the surgeon, where 5 people are threatened by one thing, and instead of, so to try and prevent that from happening, we create a wholly new threat for another smaller group of people, in this case 1, to face. So anyway, that's the solution that she gives, but there's actually one last little final clause to this. So not so fast. We're almost there. But she says we actually have to add one little additional amendment to this at the end to make it a perfect solution. So one last thing, this. And as long as the means of redirecting the threat do not violate anyone's important rights. Important rights. Okay, so why does she have to add this final little amendment at the bottom? It's because she says that without it, there are possible counterexamples to her initial unamended solution, and she needs to be able to account for those. So to show why this last little principle is added to the solution in the end, we are presented with one more trolley scenario, okay? So you've seen the solution. Hopefully that's within your notes. If not, you can come back to it later, but I'm going to erase so I can talk to you about the last case here. And you know what? I'll leave the second clause up on the board because it's relevant to the case that we're now going to just talk about. And as long as the means of redirecting the threat don't violate anyone's important rights. So, okay, this new case is labeled by Thompson. It's a name I don't prefer because I think it's not a right way to use language, but I'm just going to go with her usage because it's in the book. So the case she calls Fat Man on the Bridge. Okay, so in this version, we again have the trolley. Here it is. Straight ahead towards 5 people, passed out driver, 5 people ahead on the track. And now in this case, though, there's no fork. There's no separate stretch of the trolley track. So you would think, given that this guy can't do anything or stop the trolley, and there's no separate track, these guys are doomed. But actually, there's one thing that could be done, because in this example, there's a bridge that overlooks the trolley track, which passes underneath. So it's like a little footbridge that you could walk on, and you could stand up here looking down at the trolley passing below. Now on the bridge, let's say there's this one guy, and then there's also this large gentleman. So in this example, we imagine that there's only one possible action that could intervene such to prevent the death of these 5. What do you think it would be, given the illustration that I put on the board? What action is available that would prevent the death of those 5 people on the track here? What do you think is being suggested by the hypothetical? I mean, you see the basic outline here, and so what do you think I'm trying to suggest? In this example, the action that could prevent the death of 5 is what? Pushing the larger man off the bridge. That's right. Yeah, so no, not to worry, Olga. Here's the next question. Would that be wrong or not? Would that be okay, or you think this is wrong? To push that guy to stop the trolley from hitting the 5, so he will block them from being impacted, but he would die. Okay or not? Okay, good. Wrong. It's definitely wrong. So Olga, not to worry. And that's what everybody thinks. Everyone hears this man on the bridge case and says, that's definitely wrong. That's not okay. So here's the issue, though. That's why Thompson said we had to add this second little clause, because the initial unamended solution, this case would pose problems for it. Because think about it. What's the threat to the life of 5 people as given in the case? It's the trolley that would impact them. Now, if this man were pushed by the other individual down, what would threaten his life instead of 5? Well, don't get it misunderstood. Don't think that this is such a high bridge that pushing him kills him directly. It's so short that he easily survives the fall. So it's kind of like falls off. What happened? Then he gets killed by the oncoming trolley. So the trolley is a threat to 5 or 1 if this push happens. And it looked like, well, didn't Thompson say that as long as it's the same threat, then it's okay to divert it? But here we have the second clause, which blocks this from being acceptable. It is the same threat, but the second thing is it also matters how you divert that threat. So not just that it's the same threat, but also how you affect the diversion. So what is the means by which we place this guy in harm's way in this man on the bridge case? Like, what actual action or behavior places him in the way of the trolley? Well, in this man on the bridge case, it's a push. It's a physical assault against his person, against his body, pushing him off the top of the bridge. So that's a violation of important rights that he has. Against assault, his right to bodily autonomy, not to even be touched if he doesn't want to be. So if you believe in rights at all, I'm sure you would think that we all have rights not to be pushed to our death into the path of an oncoming trolley by a person against our will. So it's okay to divert a threat from a bigger to a smaller group, but the action that you take to achieve that diversion cannot violate an important right. So if the only way of getting that threat to face the 1 is by assaulting them, that's not okay. But in the other trolley cases, driver, bystander, loop, what is the physical action that achieves the diversion of threat? It's not pushing someone, it's not assaulting someone, it's simply doing what? New question, if you could answer that one real quick. What physical action achieves the diversion of threat in the other trolley scenarios aside from this one? Basically, what does the person have to do to get the trolley to not threaten 5 but just 1? In all other cases, aside from man on the bridge, it's not a push of anyone or touching a person. It's doing what? It's flipping a switch, right, Kylie? Which I guess what Thompson thinks is not in itself a violation of an important right. So if the method or mechanism by which you achieve the diversion of threat is merely pulling a lever, that, she thinks, doesn't strike most people as impermissible morally. But if the way of diverting the threat proceeds through a rights violation, then that by itself can invalidate the otherwise permissible character of the act. Now, this man on the bridge case, very wild and weird. I've thought of one other example that I think is much more relatable than this, that makes the same kind of point, so let me just throw it out there at you. Suppose like this is a military example. Suppose you had 6 soldiers all fighting in war, and they're all occupying a bunker. And suppose that into this bunker, let's say it's like deep and it's hard to scale up and you can't easily throw things back out of it. So anyway, into this deep, narrow bunker, a live grenade is tossed down in there by some enemy force. Okay, so right now with the live grenade in that bunker, there's a threat to the life of all 6 soldiers, and it's the detonation of the grenade. So they're all at risk of death from the threat of the grenade. Now, what is something that could be done to make that one grenade not threaten all 6 of them, but just one of them instead of 6? Can you think of that? Kind of like almost a cinematic type of scene. I think I have seen films with this exact kind of scene in them. But anyway, I'm sure it's happened in reality too. Question though, what could be the way of getting that grenade to not threaten all 6, but just one? Use your imagination. What do you think? Get on top of it. Okay, well, correct. So Brandon, if one noble act of self-sacrifice, some soldier volunteers their body to jump on top of it, that would perhaps blunt the impact of the explosive detonation and would therefore just kill the one and spare the lives of the other 5. So that might be considered permissible because it's one threat, and the means taken to divert it is a voluntary act of tossing yourself on, which you're within your rights to do if you wanted to offer yourself up. But what do you say would be an impermissible way of redistributing the threat of the grenade from 6 to just one of them? Another way of getting that same result, but it wouldn't be okay to do it this way. Instead of a person throwing themselves on top of it, if what were to happen, this would not be all right. Can you finish that thought? So what is another way of getting the grenade that was currently in the bunker facing all 6 to just threaten one of them, but a way of getting that diversion of threat which would be not okay and impermissible morally? If you push someone else on top of it, right, Sydney? So if you're like, oh my God, this grenade, we're all at risk. Sorry, you gotta push him down, hold him, right? So not jumping on it, Olga, no, that we already said. It's okay to jump on it if you're the one that's doing it of your own volition, but taking another person, holding them down against their will so that they're gonna, absorb the impact of the explosion, that would not be permissible. So it's not just that it's the same threat that faces 6 or 1, it's also the way of redirecting the threat from the larger to the smaller number. So it's okay to take means of diversion which do not in themselves constitute a serious rights violation. But if the only way to reorient the threat from the bigger to the smaller group is by means of an action which itself counts as the violation of an important right, then that's not an acceptable way to divert the threat. So diversion of threat, as long as it's the same threat, is generally okay, but you also have to make sure that the means taken of diversion are not in themselves the violation of important rights. So tossing oneself on top of the grenade, I guess, as sad as that would not be morally wrong. No one would say shame on this evil person for throwing themselves on the grenade. But you would definitely probably think something like that if you volunteered someone else against their will by force to do the same thing. So anyway, we've kind of reached to the end of our trolley problem discussions here. There's some other funny cases about it at the end. I invite you guys, if you're ever really curious, you want to dive into some black humor on trolley problem, then look up trolley problem memes. And you'll see a million different spin-offs of these scenarios, which are often, to me anyway, pretty hilarious. But they're also philosophically rich and kind of interesting just from the standpoint of ethics and the study of philosophy. So anyway, guys, it's been another great meeting. We've finished all the essays and literature for the first half now. So the only thing left for us before spring break is to review all the study guide questions, get prepared, and to take your test next Friday. So in between then and now, I'm going to be done with your essays this weekend, and I'll be in touch with you as soon as they're ready. You can check for your scores after that next week and throughout the weekend. And just make sure to attend the review session so you can get the most help for your exam next Friday, and then we'll take the test. So are we all good, everybody? Just let me know. I do have office hours 11 to 12, but it's up to anyone if they want to show to those. I sent the link earlier. But yeah, let me know that we're all good, and then I'll close our stream, and you can have a great weekend. Okay, thanks, Sydney. Thanks, everybody else. Thanks for your help and assistance with all the class meetings and your great comments. So I'll let you guys go then. All right, perfect. Take care, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye, guys.